During the Second World War, people understood that the front lines were not only in distant battlefields but also in the very neighborhoods where families lived. Air raids, sabotage, looters, and the constant threat of invasion turned kitchens and gardens into extensions of the war effort. Every home became a potential target, and every family a quiet soldier in their own defense. Governments issued manuals, communities shared knowledge, and ordinary men and women learned, almost overnight, how to transform fear into readiness. The war taught one simple truth: a house should be more than shelter, it should be a shield. Windows were not only blacked out to hide light from bombers but also reinforced with crisscross tape to prevent shattering from blast pressure. Rural homes strengthened shutters with sandbags, or heavy boards, and cellars were repurposed as shelters, filled with essentials, valuables, and emergency supplies. Families understood that survival depended not on luxury, but on preparation. Even today, these lessons echo with relevance. Reinforcing windows with pre-cut plywood, storing sandbags for floods or unrest, or setting aside a basement as an emergency refuge all stem from the same wartime logic. The tools may have changed, but the principle remains identical. Build der ponsin nerestan, de stand de broekeld. Wartime de shine, windin de stan, one ton de stamber stam. One de standes, one de son den, one de stom. To absorb impact, not to invite disaster. In areas with little access to firearms or formal defense, civilians relied on ingenuity. They developed the principle of layered defense, a sequence of obstacles designed to slow intruders and buy precious seconds to act. Gardens were turned into defensive mazes. Families planted thorny hedges beneath windows, strung wire along fences, and scattered noise-making traps like tin cans tied to string. Every step through the yard could betray a trespasser's presence. It wasn't about brute force. It was about awareness. That same principle still holds true in modern preparedness. A property doesn't need to resemble a fortress to be defensible. Honestly, a line of thorn bushes, gravel paths that crunch underfoot, and motion-activated lights all serve as modern versions of those wartime traps. The real wisdom lies in forcing a threat to reveal itself before it reaches your door. Defense was not only personal, it was communal. A single household, isolated, could not stand long against threat or chaos. During the war, communities realized that safety depended on cooperation. Neighborhood watches weren't just for spotting aircraft, they were networks of vigilance on the ground. Families rotated night watches, checked on the elderly, and devised coded signals for danger. A series of knocks, a darkened window, or the extinguishing of a lantern could warn an entire block. This collective mindset created invisible webs of protection, neighbors looking out for one another when no army could. The modern parallel is clear shared defense and communication build resilience. A simple group chat among neighbors, walkie-talkies for emergencies, or even agreed whistle codes can make the difference when danger strikes. The tools are newer, but the strategy is timeless. Defense is strongest when it is shared. Concealment was another forgotten art of wartime defense. In occupied territories, families disguised their homes to appear abandoned or worthless. Curtains stayed drawn, paint peeled by design, and gardens grew wild. Beneath this deliberate neglect was a powerful deception. What doesn't look valuable is less likely to be stolen or attacked. Inside, treasures were hidden in floorboards, walls, or buried under gardens. In today's uncertain world, that principle of invisibility is just as valuable. Preparedness should be quiet, not broadcast. Flaunting supplies, generators, or expensive tools can draw unwanted attention. The best defense sometimes is to blend in, to look as ordinary as possible while quietly being ready for anything. Silence, after all, is a kind of armor. Weapons, though important, were never the foundation of civilian defense during World War II. In many areas, firearms were unavailable or forbidden. People adapted with what they had, kitchen tools, clubs, or even boiling water. But the real focus was deterrence, not confrontation. Every trap, barrier, and reinforced door was designed to delay or discourage attackers. It wasn't about winning a fight, it was about surviving one. Modern homes can really take the same lesson to heart. reinforcing door frames with longer screws, installing heavy-duty strike plates, or even just placing tools near entry points. These are all simple, inexpensive steps that echo that same mindset. And, honestly, even a barking dog is still as valuable today as it was back then. A loyal companion and, well, a living alarm system. But, you see, the most powerful wartime defense of all wasn't physical, it was psychological. Discipline turned ordinary families into resilient units. They drilled evacuation plans, practiced blackouts, and trained children to remain calm when sirens wailed. Families kept go bags ready long before the term even existed. Bags filled with documents, rations, and essentials so they could flee to safety at a moment's notice. When chaos struck, they didn't panic. They acted. That mindset remains the foundation of true preparedness. Having gear is, honestly, useless without routine. Modern families can revive this by rehearsing emergency plans, timing how fast they can gather essentials, or practicing blackouts to test their readiness. Drills turn fear into confidence, and, repetition turns reaction into instinct. The forgotten home defenses of World War II weren't born in laboratories or military academies. They came from mothers, fathers, and neighbors, from people who refused to surrender to fear. They turned their homes into fortresses of hope, their communities into webs of protection, and their ordinary routines into acts of quiet defiance. Today, their legacy endures: reinforced windows, layered barriers, shared vigilance, concealment, and discipline. These aren't just relics of history, they're timeless principles for any era of uncertainty, whether the threat is a storm, a blackout, or social unrest. The blueprint for resilience already exists, written not in manuals, but in the lived experience of those who endured the darkest years of the 20th century. World War II proved that survival begins at home, in the strength of walls, the wisdom of preparation, and the courage of ordinary people to face extraordinary times. The war ended, but the lessons remain, waiting for anyone willing to learn from them. Because when crisis comes again, our enemies comes again, and it always does, the homes that stand will belong to those who remembered how others once did.